Enrolling in the Academy is really simple. You'll just go to our website, wblinc.org/academy. And when you get here, you'll see our main page and you can click enroll and it'll take you to this form where you're just gonna fill this out. It'll take you about 5 minutes. Once you submit this, you're enrolled in the Academy and you'll receive an email from me so you can pick the classes you'd like to take and join our Academy family. So we're an after-school program rooted in hip hop. So we have a bunch of classes that you may find interesting. You can go right to our website and go to our classes tab and you'll see some of them, from performing arts like hip hop theater, spoken word, hip hop dance, some of our business classes that are like a boss and walk it like I talk it, which would be more arts management and entrepreneur based. And then we also have things like our music classes, MCing and rapping and beat production and DJing. You can go to wblinc.org/academy to enroll.
What's going on, good people? It's Mazi Mutafa here for the next installment, the sixth episode of No New Leaders. And I'm pretty excited about this conversation for a whole range of reasons, including the fact that I'm going to be talking to someone who's been a friend for a while, who's done some really interesting work that I think impacts the lives of people in Washington, D.C., but is a part of a community that's impacting the whole world. My guest for today is going to be Mr. Asad Ultra Walker, founder of the KGB crew, which is the Crazy Graph Brothers. What's going on, Asad?
How you doing, brother?
I'm very well. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. I know we've got a couple of other folks that are going to join us hopefully shortly, but if they don't, it's just going to be me and you rocking. Why don't you take a second to introduce yourself for the folks that don't know who you
are? My name is Asad. I grew up in DC. I've been involved some kind of way with the hip hop scene here in DC since probably the very early 80s, particularly graffiti. But I come from a time where all the different elements mixed together, socialized together. And I lived in New York in the 80s as well. So I kind of have I feel like I have a kind of a broad view of hip hop and hip hop culture, and have seen it grow from people were calling it a fad, that it wasn't going to go anywhere, and to what it is today. Now it's just infiltrated, the art, the music, everything is just infiltrated American pop culture.
This is very true. I mean, I've had the opportunity to be able to travel the world and see graffiti all over the place. I wanted to have a conversation with you, to be honest, inspired by another panel discussion we hosted called Hip Hop Futures, where a good friend of ours, Mr. Pose 2, also known as Max Moses, was talking about really what drew him to hip hop as a graffiti artist and what it is that really compelled him to want to be a part of the culture. And he talked about risk, the danger inherent in being a person that goes out to create illegal graffiti on other people's property, as an expression of his own identity and culture. And so I know that identity is, foundational in terms of the way you approach teaching about graffiti. So and this is a show about leadership. So I wonder, as a part of people, forging their own identity through creative expression, how you think, or if you think, leadership or becoming a leader, even if it's a leader of one, is a part of graffiti culture.
That's a tough question. I've said it to you before. I think of graffiti. Graffiti is just a big spectrum. So most definitely you've got loners, guys that don't want to associate with other people, or women that are, trying to get away from the kind of normal modes of expression. And then I think inherent to hip hop is a kind of community like let's get together and let's do this, let's do this thing together. So you've got like different ends of the spectrum in graffiti. um for me, I kind of came at graffiti, I mean, you know this, I came at graffiti kind of before I really knew about hip hop. I knew about the go-go scene here in DC, and I came at it from go-go was my original kind of jumping on point for graffiti. And um I do think that hip hop and go-go have a lot of things in common. And for me, um in the very early 80s, 1981, I started tagging in 81. I formed KGB in 1983 with several other people, and the idea was, in the streets you had to band together against whatever was whatever was out there. There was other people that were hostile to what you were doing, whether it was, whether it was graffiti or just, moving through the street. There were people that were hostile to that. And it was, for me, when I started, it was such a loner kind of a thing. I just wanted to be known. In my high school, I wanted to get up in the neighborhoods that I moved in, and I didn't, until I started finding other people that were like-minded. I didn't really find I never really thought of banding together, and like now we're doing productions together and networking and all those things. I had never thought of that. I always thought of it as a very solo thing when I first started. So when I discovered, hey, there's other people, I mean, I had always known there were other people interested. Obviously, I was walking around the city, there was graffiti everywhere. But when I really started meeting people, and it kind of changed. It kind of changed how I approached graffiti, if that makes sense.
Makes total sense. P.S. I also want to go ahead and bring on my co-host, Mr. Greg Corbin. Greg, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey.
So we're talking with Asad about kind of his own journey. So you're talking about from the beginning. So catch us up. So what, in terms of thinking about, but so actually no. Let's stay back there. So you talk. I know part of what you talk about is the creation of things like graffiti magazines. Even the idea that people have made the effort to be able to do things like create paint companies so that people would be able to, so like there's all different kinds of leadership or innovation that's happened over time. I think so. I'm gonna bring Greg back, but for some reason he's having issues with the audio. So he should probably log out and then come back in. But there have been all kinds of innovations that have occurred within the graffiti community, led by graffiti writers or people that are sympathetic to graffiti. So who are some of the examples of people that you would point to as leaders or innovators within graffiti?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I just think that's hip hop. You know what I'm saying? Just hip hop, period. Like, you got people innovating technology across the board. And I do want to say, my view, I believe graffiti existed before hip hop, but I believe that hip hop is what really they both kind of came up at similar times. And when hip hop and graffiti met, it infused it with hip hop culture. And whenever I look at any element of hip hop, I see the same kinds of struggles, the same kind of innovations. To answer your question directly, I mean, right off the top, the two graffiti artists in Spain, Barcelona, Spain, bought their own paint factory and started their own spray paint company. And that right there was an innovation that's changed. It's changed the industry. You know what I mean? And I don't just mean for graffiti artists. I mean for artists in general. I mean, you can't go in an art store now without seeing cases and cases of spray paint and paint markers, and that came from either this company or some of the other companies that are copying that company. So you know, to me, that's just one example. I mean, that's kind of a technological example, but I really think that innovation, kind of thinking outside of the box, is a big thing in graffiti and a big thing in hip hop. As far as like leadership goes, I think some of the first crews and so on, a lot of how they interact. I think a lot of that came from graffiti. I'm not going to overlook kind of gang culture in the Bronx. The kind of for me, the crew culture here in DC, which is a little different than the gang culture, but all those things kind of influenced and came together at the right time to create like community, to create groups. I know people look down at gangs, people look down at that kind of street crew culture, but you know, I grew up in it and I don't look down at it, and I think it's kind of important that people understand that there's a lot of good things that came out of those, you know, the gang culture in New York.
I got you. So you're talking in generality. So naming some people, I think you could probably think about Taki as someone who's a leader, not because he was trying to be a leader, but because he, like you said, he was chasing the idea of fame, of being able to be all city before that was a thing. You could talk
Right.
about Cornbread as a person that was responsible for innovation, who would also be a leader from Philly. You could
Right.
talk about Africa Bambaataa being a field general for the Black Spades and creating the Universal Zulu Nation. So
Right.
these are people who you could point to as leaders within hip hop and leaders within graffiti. I think that pointing out the folks in Barcelona is a great example of kind of commercial innovation connected to graffiti culture and community. But you've also got the kind of large jams like powwow that happen all over the world. So these are all really tangible examples of things that people who saw the need for, as you're describing, community / innovation have gone about creating spaces and platforms for people to be able to see and express themselves. I know that you've been a part of things like powwow that happened over in Noma, which is the neighborhood in Washington, D.C. You've also been a part of things like Murals DC. You've also helped to put together and organize jams with Albus Cavis and Words Beats and Life. And so it's so clearly you're a person that is either next to or an example of leadership. But I think going back to KGB, and you're saying that a big part of the early influence or just influence period on graffiti was kind of gang culture. I wonder what are the kind of principles of leadership that you can point to that are part of gang culture that survive through hip hop or survive through graffiti. How's your audio, Greg? Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Great. So Asad, what are kind of the things that survive from gang culture that are part of graffiti or part of hip hop more broadly?
Well, I think some of the organizational aspects of it, you know, having a hierarchy, being organized, and I think particularly in New York, like, you know, everybody knows gang culture and gang fights and this and that, and they know the jackets and they know all that stuff, but they don't know about, like, you know, the Young Lords party. The Young Lords was a gang in New York. They organized politically to improve their neighborhood. They actually supported political candidates in the Bronx and helped their community. The Zulu Nation. I don't think hip hop would be here without. I don't want to just say the Zulu Nation, but that kind of we're gonna we want to have a fun time. We want to socialize, and some of the more rougher elements of the organizations provided protection so that everyday people could go and have fun and make music and be creative. And I really think without that, a lot of what hip hop is wouldn't have happened. And graffiti, I've watched graffiti evolve. Like I said, I was just one when I started. I was just one guy going out. We didn't really talk to each other. I didn't really know other graffiti artists. I was 16, and until to today, we like you were mentioning graffiti jams. We have organized jams where multiple crews come together and paint together, socialize together. I've organized paint jams with 70 or more artists show up, which is a lot of artists if you think about it. So I think a lot of kind of the gang mentality. First of all, to describe what crews are within graffiti, crews are groups of people. Usually there's not a lot of hierarchy to it, but there are groups that are organized for kind of protection, for promoting projects within the group, you trust the guys in your crew. My crew, KGB, I started it with like two of my best friends. They were really good artists, and my friend Ski and my homeboy Ritz, and we started. We had been drawing together and tagging together in high school, and it grew and grew. We added more. We found other like-minded people that we really trusted we organized paint jams. We protect, to be honest with you, if we had beef with another crew, we would band together and do whatever it took to defeat that crew. You know what I mean? I'm sorry, the screen went on like that, and so I don't think there's really I came at it from, I didn't even know what a graffiti crew was.
You know what's funny, Asad? I feel like you're being really PC about this, because I would imagine that some of the holdovers from gang culture, especially in graffiti, would also involve things like how it is that you're acquiring paint. That is not necessarily an individual responsibility. I would also imagine that it's also about going over other people's work, whether that's dissing them or whether that is continuing beef. Like, I don't know why you're being so PC this morning, because you love to like lift up the darker side, not to glorify it, but to acknowledge it and to recognize that that's part of the process. We've just been joined by one of my other co-hosts, Dr. Jason Nichols. What's going on, Grouchy?
Nothing much. I apologize for stepping in a little bit late. Started washing dishes, lost track of time. But then I remembered that my man Asad Walker was going to be on here, Ultra. So I was like, yo, I definitely got to be in here. We were just discussing the origins of hip hop and graffiti and all that recently. So I definitely wanted to be on for this one. Couldn't miss it. Thank you, Asad, for coming on with us, brother.
No problem.
So let's not give the sanitized version, Asad. Like, this is like the real story of your life, and of this culture. Because part of the appeal, part of the danger, I think, that Pose 2 was talking about, or the risk, is the actual danger. Like, it is the being able to go and paint at a space that is very hard to get to. Those pieces that are called heavens, like literally taking your life into your own hands to paint your name or to do a tribute. And so, like, this idea that graffiti is actually, of all of the elements of hip hop, is the most dangerous, is the one that has potential jail time attached to it, has physical harm potentially attached to it. And so, how is it that this, like you talked about the creation of crews, which are loose affiliations of people, yada yada yada, but like, how is it that space isn't hierarchical? Like, how is it that everybody is equal when there might need to be a call to go on a mission? Is when you say it's not hierarchical, it's not so much that, no, Mozzie, that doesn't mean we can't go on missions. It just means that I can't call it. Like, I can't force people to do it. Everyone who's in the crew has the ability to make a decision for him or herself about what it is that we're going to do as a group. Like, how does non-hierarchy work in a crew context?
Yeah. Well, like I said, I'll try to be less PC. Like I said, my crew started here in DC. There was a big crew culture already going on here in DC, associated particularly with go-go music. And, I didn't even know there was, I mean, I guess I had an idea, but I didn't know anything about New York graffiti crews. I didn't know anything about it. There were crews here, go-go crews, Ghostbusters, Gangster Chronicles, Minnesota Avenue, different crews throughout the city, and they were known for kind of enforcing their the safe. I guess I'm trying to be PC. If they went in a go-go and there was another crew there and they didn't get along, or somebody said something or whatever, it was a fight. And in those days, it was a fist fight. So so you had these crews, that were pretty large. I mean, I definitely saw some fights like Ghostbusters and different crews. I saw a guy, I don't want to get into, I saw a guy get beat down in like a second, you know what I mean? And he went down, and when he got up, his head was like a basketball. And that I was like 17, you know what I mean? And so that was, what the street was like. And we kind of formed KGB. We like graffiti, but it was really about looking out and protecting ourselves. You know what I mean? When we went somewhere, if somebody stepped to one of us, they stepped to all of us. And so, it definitely, that was like the street, on the street level. So it definitely, we were a crew, not just for graffiti, but also, like I said, whenever we moved through the city, I don't think we were killing anything. We weren't like the baddest crew, but we, when it came to graffiti, we always stood out because we were, we had been around the longest, and we had been around, we weren't afraid to get in a fist fight for what we cared about.
We got you, because ultimately you usually describe this as a fraternity.
Yeah.
One of my co-hosts want to jump in?
Yeah. You got it, Jason.
No, go ahead, Greg. We'll do it. I'll do it.
Thinking about, as Asad was talking, it's thinking of, Mozzie's, how does you have a non-hierarchical structure? Who's calling the shots? To dig into the question, influences, right? Talking about earlier in the week was this kind of being
Hey, Greg, I'm not sure if it's
influence.
I'm not sure if it's your headphones, but you're cutting in and out.
You hear me now? Should I just go straight phone?
Yeah, I think your phone would be fine.
Okay. Hello?
Yeah, that's much better.
Okay. So Ozzy and I were talking about earlier in the week was this conversation. Is that really leadership, right? Somebody is influenced or how a person behaves, is that leadership? And Mozzie was asking about like having a structure. How do you lead, looking at leader as being one person? Who like really dictate in those moment nuance structures, when especially something not.
So the question is, how, in case you missed it, was in a non-hierarchical structure, how do you make decisions? How are decisions made in a crew?
Now I would say that I am within the crew. I'm definitely the founder, the president, or whatever you might want to call it. But I would say when we chose different people to be in the crew, generally we try to choose people that were like on our level, you know what I'm saying, or on my level. Like I didn't want to choose. I didn't just choose 50 people. I chose one at a time, and I said, "Hey, this guy's really good, and I really like where his head is at. Hey, yo, would you like to be down with my crew, etc." And so, generally, depending on the situation, people made their own decisions. I usually trusted, and I never had a problem. Really, never had a problem with people making their own decisions. Particularly about graffiti, but in general, I've never had a problem with people making kind of decisions on their own or whatever. And I think that's I'm pretty picky on who is in the crew. We have, of course, in the 2000s, we started, picking younger and younger people to be in the crew, younger to us relative to the older heads. And we did, and I almost think we did kind of a probationary status for some people, like, hey, let's see where his head is at, and etc. But we never really, I almost think we didn't have to do that. And so, and in some ways it's kind of joking. We would call the older heads were the uncles, and the younger heads were called the nephews. So, but it's kind of a half joke. Generally, there's not like me going, okay, let's go out tonight and we're gonna go do this. We might talk about it and say, hey, let's go do Georgia Avenue tonight, and everybody get together at the same time, and we'll go over there. But it wasn't like putting out orders. And I think a lot of that came from that we were so close socially that that we kind of moved as a unit. I think I've talked with you, Mozzie, before. Everybody used to come over to my house and have dinner. I would make spaghetti. Guys know Cool Disco Dan used to live with me. He used to live in my living room. And I had a room just for the TV. We would watch graffiti videos. And we hung together almost every single day, every night. We would go bombing maybe, and we would spread out throughout the city. And at the end of the night, we would all meet. If you guys were around back when Georgetown Cafe was a thing, we would meet at Georgetown Cafe, and it'd be like we'd have a table with like 20 dudes all sitting around a table at 4 a.m., eating breakfast and talking about what, oh, I just came from the club. Oh, I just was over in the train yards. And you know what I'm saying? Everybody was talking about what they had done that night. So that was called, jokingly, that was called KG breakfast. And so we had like little social things that we always did stuff together. We always moved I don't want to say everybody moved as a unit, but like if we went to the club, it was probably like 4 or 5 of us. If we went to an event, it'd probably be at least 5, 6, 7 of us at a time.
So, Asad, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions, graffiti related. I have a ton right now, but the first thing about your crew, and you talked about recruiting. When you had people in your crew that you recruited, did you ever have a situation where somebody did something that was out of line, like maybe unnecessarily dissing another crew and getting y'all into beef or something like that? And was there ever a process for castigating somebody or even, potentially kicking them out of the crew?
So I don't think I've ever really had a situation like that. We probably, I would, yeah, I don't think I've ever had I've seen it happen outside of my crew. In fact, I can think of multiple stories of guys that I knew and was friends with, but weren't in my crew, that that would do stuff that I just was like, man, you're just starting beef just to start beef, and da, 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 da. I kind of could see it, and just, I mean, I might have been friends with them, but I never put them down in the crew.
Tell the truth, Asad. You were that person, and since you were the founder, they couldn't kick you out. Tell the truth. Tell the truth.
That's why I did it. That's why I started KGB, because no one would allow me in their crew.
So,
but no, I mean, I think that it's a good point. I mean, I think the way, and I don't think every graffiti crew does it this way or whatever. I think I was very picky, and I think everybody that was in the crew was picky, and I've never come to a point where I wanted to kick somebody out or anything like that. I've always been very picky, so I didn't just go meet a guy and go, "Oh, you paint really good. You should come with our crew," or whatever. I would observe somebody, 6 months or longer. And there's people that I'm really, really good friends with that are not in the crew. So, I'm picky.
It's interesting because I said the fraternity piece earlier, and I think Jason chuckled. But that's actually also how fraternities work. Is like part of what you do is observe men in their lives and see how they are, and decide if this is a person who you think you could trust with the reputation of your brotherhood. And so this idea that there's an informal interview process that takes place, I think is just kind of interesting. I would imagine the same thing would be true for a gang. You wouldn't just put anybody down because somebody could snitch. There's all these different processes that act as filters to decide who should actually be affiliated.
Yeah, I didn't chuckle. I thought it made perfect sense. My other question is just about graffiti generally, and that is, I'm thinking back to Style Wars, where forgetting the white dude's name, but he was like, he was actually like, just as a movie, I always liked his character because he was kind of gangster. But he said there's a difference between a graffiti bomber and a graffiti writer. And he was like, I'm a graffiti bomber. And so I'm wondering, you said you guys went out bombing. Do you believe in that distinction between a bomber and a writer, or can bombers write and writers bomb sometimes, or how does that actually work?
Okay, you're talking about Cap, and so Cap, and by the way, our online discussion that we were having, Cap, is from the Bronx. But anyway, Cap. So there, to me, there are different terms for what we do, right? And so early graffiti, like you guys know, Taki, Cornbread, even the go-go graffiti that I did, I call that's graffiti writing, right? And graffiti writing was just tagging your name, not really putting any kind of art to it, anything like that. And then I think Mozzie's heard me talk about this before. I think that graffiti met hip hop and it pushed graffiti writing into graffiti art, right? And so you kind of have, you'll hear people like me, I'll refer to myself as both graffiti writer, graffiti artist. Graffiti bombing to me is, and what he was saying, I'm not a graffiti artist. I'm not here to make things pretty. I'm bombing. I'm a graffiti bomber.
Right.
And I don't really, I definitely respect Cap. I think he's a great artist. I don't think he would admit it himself. I don't think he would say he's an artist. I mean, he doesn't, obviously. I don't think he still would call himself an artist. And but I would. I think he's a great artist. And but to me, the act of bombing is going out and just putting up as much illegal graffiti as you possibly can. And he was very good at that. You know what I mean? Where some of those guys were trying to paint a train and make it look nice and make it, people look at them from that point of view. Yo, that did you see that train? It's a work of art. Where Cap was like, yo, I'm just gonna hit every train all the time. You know what I mean? And it was just a difference in philosophy to me. So, but I still consider his work art. And
but aside, question, because remember, this is a conversation about leadership. So if graffiti writers, graffiti artists, and people that bomb, they are sometimes affiliated with crews, sometimes just what in the world of fraternities we call GDIs, goddamn individuals, just people out there doing their own thing. I wonder if this is a kind of leadership. On our last conversation, Jason asked a great question of our guest, which was, how many people do you have to lead in order to be a leader? And so if Cap, because of this film, is having his philosophy put out to the whole world, does he become a de facto leader of all the people that adopt that philosophy? Does he need to actually be directing them to be leading them?
I would say so. Yeah, I definitely know some people that follow his philosophy quite closely. Shout out to Cast One. But he also was in a crew, and he also put people down. He also took artists under his wing. I think it's pretty well documented. You guys know Cope. You've probably heard of Cope too. He was at one time, Cap gave him his letters. That means that at one time Cope was a young kid and wasn't really good at letters, and Cap said practice, drew some letters for him and said practice these letters. And Cap was in a crew and a leader of a crew. So he if you watch that movie, he's definitely like the bad guy of that movie. But if you watch when he's walking around, he's walking with several other people. He's not alone.
Let's do a little bit of translation. You said he put people down. For people that are not graffiti writers, that means he made them a part of the crew. He gave them letters. This process sometimes of giving people their names by assigning them letters to be able to work on, to develop letters and numbers. So to me, these are kind of surviving Africanisms. But I see Greg over there chomping at the bit. I want to go ahead and let him jump in. Hopefully his audio is a little bit better.
Yeah, I'm good, right? Everybody hears me. Okay, perfect. So Asad, I mean, we're talking a lot about what leadership looks like. I think you did a great job of laying out like some moving parts of leadership, which is creating an environment where people can build relationships around that same theme or that same philosophy or ideology, right? But can you share a little bit about what leadership doesn't look like?
Great question.
Mm.
You got all that, Asad?
Yeah, I got it. I'm trying to think of a way.
I mean, so while you're thinking, I mean, there are probably people, maybe to ground a little bit more in graffiti, there are probably people whose approaches to putting people down or approaches to building a crew you probably don't respect. And so that would be an example of that's not what it looks like. Follow me?
But can I enter one other thing into the conversation? And I think Mazi and I have discussed this over the past couple of weeks. I think that there's also a thing called bad leadership. So, you know, you can say like it's not leadership at all, but I might say that no, it's just bad leadership. You know what I mean? Like,
so what does that look like in a graffiti context, Asad?
Yeah, I want to say, I want to be diplomatic about this. I am known for not getting along with certain people in the graffiti world, particularly in DC, and a lot of it is because I don't.
Hey, Asad, it's not personal. It's not
right.
a personal critique. It's like
no, and I'm saying what I don't. That's what I'm saying. I don't want anybody to take it personal.
Good.
I have my style, and they have their style. I think for me, you know, I have a certain code that I follow. I don't know if I can put it in totally into words, but I believe I believe that there's within graffiti there's a certain way of doing things, and you know times have changed, and I don't think that for example, if two graffiti writers have beef with each other and one is in my crew, if it's just between those writers, I'm going to stay out of it. But when the other crew jumps in, let's say the other guy has another crew and they jump in, then our whole crew, I'm going to put it, and this is one of the times where I'm going to come in as a leader. I'm going to say to the whole crew, yo, X has a problem. We got to back them up. And, you know, I want to see everybody out there, you know, crossing out this other crew. I think everybody knows what crossing out means. Going over.
No, yeah. I was gonna say no, they don't. You should explain it.
You know, just painting over the other crew, disrespecting their pieces, or whatever.
So I heard the first principle is if there's conflict between a person and a person, those two people handle it. But if it's between a person and a crew, the crew has the back of their crew member.
Yes.
That's a great principle.
And you know, even you know, and it can be hard in the graffiti world because you can be friends with guys in another crew. I'll give you an example. I had a guy, I still have a guy in my crew named Sime, and Sime had beef with a guy named Mo. He had a beef with their crew, and the crew was called ATB, and you know, for the most part, it was just one-on-one type of stuff, but it started to be multiple guys from that crew going over Sime. So I actually was friends with Mo, and you know, and we called him, and several other crew members were friends with Mo, and we called him up and we said, dude, are you going to keep doing this? Is this going to be a thing? Because if it is, we're going to bring the whole crew. And he said yes, and we said yes, and so it became KGB, and it lasted a week, I think a week, because both of our crews were very serious about graffiti. It wasn't. We were both pretty heavy hitters. I think this was around, I want to say 2008, something like that. But and then the beautiful thing is again, within that social structure, there's a guy in their crew called Noor, and they all talked, and Noor kind of squashed the beef, got squashed, and because we knew each other and respected each other, and so we were going out doing those things. You know, we were going over that other crew, they were going over us, but we kept it again within the confines of graffiti. We didn't do like little sneaky stuff like put another person's name or just I'll bring out a slang word. We didn't just Charlie Brown other people's pieces. Charlie Brown is when you just come along and you do a zigzag across somebody's piece and you don't sign it. We were full. We stuck to the rules of graffiti. So when we squashed the beef, everything was good. We're friends. I've seen Mo since then. He hangs out with other friends of mine, other people in the crew. You know, we stayed within those rules, and then when the beef was over, we were able to be friends again.
So I heard at least two more principles in there. One was when peace is made, peace is made. So that was the last one you said. I think another one you said, which was if there is beef, that you actually own it, that there's integrity behind the idea of
conflict,
of the conflict. So like we got three principles. It took a long story to get there, but we got three principles. I see Jason and Greg both want to jump in. Do we want to continue to ask Asad to unearth these principles of his, or do we want to jump to a new question?
No, we can go with the principles. I can wait.
But Asad, we don't need to necessarily name people, even though in this case it was good because you're like, I'm friends with these folks. But like, let's try to unearth your principles. We got three of them so far. What else we got?
Gee whiz. Well, I mean, like I said, man, you know, I really, I believe in having like a standard. You know what I mean? I'll give you another example. And hopefully I won't make anybody angry.
Actually, so sorry, you actually said that earlier, which was that in building a crew, you're not trying to get people who are less than you. You're actually trying to build a crew of equals, people who are equally as skilled, equally as
or more
committed, etc.
Yeah, I mean, from my crew, I most definitely want heavy hitters, and that means that are very not just literally heavy hitters, but guys that are talented, that go out and paint, and you know, are very good with the paint. At one time, probably less so now, but at one time, they also literally had to be heavy hitters. Like you know, you literally had to back each other up in a fight or whatever. They had to be there, and you know, I know that not. You know, now I'm older, but I still like that kind of mentality. I want people that are going to put it on the line for each other.
We got you. So it sounds like that sixth principle is one of your sayings: never ran, never will. It looked like Greg was going to jump in, and so was Jason. Let me go ahead and so we got a lot of principles. Like, you're the first guest that's given us principles of their leadership. I really appreciate you being willing to share that and allowing us to unearth some of these things. Greg, did you want to jump in before Jay?
I'm gonna let Jason go. I'm still trying to figure out how to structure my question.
All right.
Okay. So one of the things about graffiti that's always interested me, and I have so many questions, but you know, Mozzie always tells me don't ask too many questions at once. So I'm gonna parse this out. But the first thing isn't really a question. It's just kind of a statement that I'd like for you to kind of respond to. And one of the things that I've always found interesting about graffiti versus any other element of hip hop or in any, you know, kind of even art medium, is that there's this ability to be famous and anonymous at the same time. And that's always intrigued me, is that, you want to be known but not known. And is that something that was attractive to you when you were coming up doing graffiti as a young man and young kid?
I guess to a degree. I mean, I think for example, when I was in high school, everybody knew who I was, or you know what I mean? They knew the people that knew. And even later in life, it's really hard to keep yourself unknown on a street level. You know what I mean? I think, I think you want to, you kind of want to, I come from DC, so DC was a little different. Like, definitely, like on a street level, people knew who you were. I think for the most part, I think that you did it for fame for the most part. You just didn't want the police to know who you were. You know what I mean?
I love the fact that in telling your own story, because I'm glad I know a lot about you. So, like, there was a period of time in your teenage years where you were homeless, and people in school knew that. And so one of the nicknames they had for you was Hobo, and you decided to take that name and use it to gain your fame. So you became Hobo of Everywhere. And so this idea that, yes, there are people who, like you just said, there are people who you want people to know. You don't want the police to know or the property owner to know. So the average person is not going to know who a graffiti writer is just because they see their name, just because they're not a part of the community or the community of that young person or not so young person. But you talk a lot about the idea that fame is part of what drives young people in terms of forging their identities to even go into graffiti. Like, I remember a period of time when all over the city we saw Magic, and then we saw Tragic, and then I met both of them, and both of them were really out there trying to pursue a degree of fame. Then we also see graffiti writers like Fame. Literally, that's their name. So Jason's question is about the fact that it's embedded, but even the fame that you have is still anonymous to the average person. So this kind of, it's in that sense, it's kind of the anti-hero or anti-leader in the sense that you're known for what you do, but not for who you are.
It's like Batman, almost, or a superhero.
Yeah,
you're anonymous and famous at the same time.
I mean, it's a funny thing. Like, I would say there's extreme. I'm probably on one end of the spectrum in that a lot of people know who I am. They knew who I was back then. Even as Ultra, I was pretty well known. You know what I mean? I mean, even now, I walk. I mean, and it's surprising because you don't want to take it for granted. You don't want to go, oh, you know who I am. You know what I mean? But I walked in I tell this story. I walked in an art store in Baltimore. I was painting at the graffiti alley there, and I needed some more silver, and I went into the art store, and the guy behind the counter was like, Ultra, and I'm like, damn, I'm not even in DC, so it's surprising. It'll come out of the blue. The people that know, and I think I'm one end of the spectrum. I think the other end of the spectrum would be Cool Disco Dan. Generally, no one knew who Dan was. You had to be really close friends with him. You probably a graffiti writer. People just did not know who Dan was. I've talked about it before. I literally have had Dan with me, next to me, and people were talking to me about Dan, and they did not know that the guy with me was Dan. They're like, "Yo, Cool Disco Dan is so so great. He's up everywhere, and Dan would just sit there. And he was super humble dude. You know what I mean? So I think there's definitely different ends of the spectrum, and you know, but I think for the most part, you know, it's kind of like a hip hop a hip hop culture thing, like or a street culture thing where you want to be known to some degree by the people that that you want to know. You know what I'm saying? Like I wanted everyone in my high school, or at least the cool kids in my high school to know who I was. You know what I mean?
I wonder if Jason's Batman metaphor is really more relevant than it seems, which is thinking about the influence of early comic book culture on hip hop and people, the idea of taking on another identity. But Greg got something to jump in with.
That was a heck of a parallel too, Mozzie. I was like, wow, where's he about to go with this one? And I can see that because I just saw a Marvel exhibit the other day, and I saw the first ever Marvel comic that it was in there. But, you know, art and media and expression go hand in hand. But I think I wanted to ask Asad just to pivot a little bit in the conversation. Where is leadership now in the world of graffiti? What is it like today? And where do you think it's headed? You know, based on your experiences, because we know the definition of leadership could be fluid.
I think crews can be a little different than they were, but I think for the most part they're still structured the same. And then you've got differing kind of philosophies about what graffiti is about, what it's for. You know, I have people like, if I do an art show, there's graffiti guys that are like, oh, you're a sellout. You know what I mean? Whereas when I was young, and I'm like, yo, I've been painting graffiti 20 years longer than you have. You know what I mean? And when I first started, I didn't have any money. I wanted to make money. I lived on Georgia Avenue. I was dead broke. You know, I wanted to do T-shirts for people, and I wanted to make money. You know, I did anything I could to use my graffiti skills to make money. So I see a lot of crews now, or being very organized, doing art shows. I'm watching right now. If you're online, if you know the Seventh Letter Crew, which is a LA crew, they're doing a tour across the country. I think they're going to end it with an art show in Miami or somewhere. So they're Instagramming and along the way, and they're painting all along the way from California to Florida. And they're very organized professionally. So I think, I think that a lot of crews are I think a big thing about crews is just being organized, being professional, being organized. I say professional, I don't just mean in a business sense. I mean like being organized and having kind of like a mission and an idea of where you're going and what you're doing. And then, of course, there are young crews that are not so organized or whatever. But, again, it goes back to that spectrum. But I think as far as leadership, I think you've got crews now that are really organized. And I think that's always been a thing, organizing together and moving as a unit and doing things in the art world, or maybe even innovating and doing like this thing that Seventh Letter is doing this kind of tour across the United States. So I think that's always been a graffiti thing, but I think now with Instagram and stuff like that, people are innovating new ways of doing it.
So Asad, it's funny, like
AJ,
say
sorry, we're actually at time, brother.
Give me one more question.
All right, go ahead.
All right, so you may not remember this. The first time we met years and years ago, we met uh, at an event, and we were sitting there chopping it up, having this conversation. And part of the conversation was about the rules of being up, what it meant to be up. And I'm wondering what the rules are for KGB. Shout out to my man Sam Beckett, K Skills. Shout out to Eon. Like, one of the discussions I remember, there was like a little beef, and I knew both of these guys. You know, I was closer to Eon, but and I knew Beckett. You know, and there was this thing like, Beckett, you're not up. You know what I mean? And Beckett was like, you know, I'm up in a different way. You know, I put my tag on a sticker and I put my sticker on the wall. I'm still up. And I remember in the conversation that you and I had, it was, you know, about like, what can you bomb? What's off limits? Like, are cars off limits? Or, you know, what is, you know, so I'm just wondering, I don't remember what your answer was. So I'm wondering if, you know, there are certain things in your crew that you laid down as the rules as the leader of what you can bomb and what you can't, you know, particularly when you're attached to KGB.
Right. I would say no. I think all of us, I mean, I think most of the people that are involved with my crew have kind of a similar, you know, we're from a similar background. Some, you know, most KGB members are a little bit younger now, but yeah, I would say cars are out of the picture. You know, stuff like that is out of the picture. I mean, I think graffiti is you know, it's a game of, to me, it's a game of respect. It's about respect, and so it's kind of like feeling out what is that, what does that mean in the city, in an urban environment. And I think cars, usually houses, stuff like that is obviously respected. I've talked about, you know, churches and stuff like that. Generally all that stuff is off limits, and I don't think I would have to say that to anybody in my crew. I don't think that there's, so if you know me, I'm going to tell you how I feel no matter what. So I'm not going to be specific about this incident, but there was an incident where someone painted on a non-graffiti artist that was a woman, and unnecessarily so, right? So the person that painted on the woman, that person was in my crew, and I definitely let that person know I was not happy. You know, and I, you know, I did, there was no punishment handed down or anything like that. It just was, yo, dude, that's wrong, you know. And you know what I'm saying? I don't think that there's like, you know, a book where I go, okay, the punishment for doing this is this. I just let him know, yo, I'm not really happy with that. And depending on whether or not he respects me, did he take the message to heart or not? I believe he did. So hopefully that answers your question. There's not really like a set thing.
Right, and I'm aware of sometimes beefs get squashed by actually providing paint. If you diss somebody's work, so Asad.
Doesn't look like
yeah. I this is one of those.
I didn't say that
I
instance.
like,
I didn't say that.
I would never give another person paint ever.
So we got another rule: never give another person paint.
So this is an actual rule I had back in the day. And if you guys know my RZA story, I don't lend paint. I never lend paint. I don't steal paint, so I don't lend it. Right. So that's the root of a story that I guess we're gonna have to tell some other time.
Some other time, because we're 4 minutes over. So I want to thank you for coming through, for dropping some gems. Definitely appreciate it. Jason and Greg, appreciate y'all making time on early on this Sunday. Hopefully you all got the things out of that conversation that you wanted.
Awesome combo.
Dope.
I learned a lot.
That's what's up. That's the goal. All right. So That's another episode of No New Leaders. This is episode 6. Feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Instagram. Feel free to make a donation at wblinc.org/ACT. All right. We'll catch you next Sunday at the regular bat time on the regular bat channel.
Let's take you on a time jump, virtual Zoom, bringing it back to Theodore's bedroom. These hands are passionately polysyllabic, putting the Jeopardy theme on swings. 10 dons giving predictions, balancing vibes like the sons and daughters of Ipwan. Ear to the ear to the underground, flicking off peppermint, fresh experiment. Let's go. El Premier Elemento, you gotta take your time, press your fingers to the line. Red man, focus your mind. And once you do that, you're at the front of the combine.